This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi there. Today we go back to basics on the show, and I share a short bite from episode 84, where the hugely respected Dr. Jim Afremow shares with you some thoughts on the field of sports psychology to improve your understanding on what we can offer as practitioners. He touches on the crossover between supporting people with performance issues as well as mental health concerns, working with youngsters, and the fact mental skills, as is the case with mental toughness, can be learned with good support and guidance. Enjoy.
About 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there wasn't too much on sports psychology out there for the general public. And so that just really piqued my interest. At University of Oregon, I studied psychology, and then I went to grad school at Michigan State and really just fell in love with the topic and, earned my PhD there. And started realizing that, in terms of mental health, how important that is as well for any performer. And so then that's why I decided to earn a master's degree in counseling. And so with the work that I've been fortunate enough to do with athletes and teams and other types of performers in other achievement domains, really working with the whole person to help them be the best version of themselves, or as, Phil and I like to talk about in terms of being a gold medalist, in terms of having a gold medal life, or, thinking like a champion in your sport to get the best out of what you do have.
So do you find most of your work is more performance related, or is there a nice balance between mental health and performance?
Well, I think that's what's exciting about the field of sports psychology and mental health is that, circumstances are always changing. So someone might be, presenting with more of a performance related concern, in terms of, hey, how do I focus when I get distracted, or how do I refocus when it counts the most? And so that might be a topic of discussion, but then at a later time, life happens, and maybe there's an illness in the family, or, there's a different situation in terms of, relational issues, things like that, financial challenges. And so we focus more on off the field issues. So usually it's a nice combination of both.
Yeah. Similarly, I find that that's pretty much the same. And as you say, things are evolving and changing, and there seems to be certainly more awareness of mental health, definitely in the UK here. I'm guessing it's the same over there.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, it's gotten a lot worse with COVID. And Phil and I have done a lot of research in terms of interviews and looking in terms of actual studies on mental health issues in the athlete population. And it's just unfortunate, in terms of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, those kind of things. And so, as Phil and I like to talk about, there's no health without mental health. And there's obviously not going to be peak performance unless things are, pretty okay in terms of the personal side of life. So, it's kind of like two hands. You need to use both, in terms of mental health and peak performance strategies.
What would your advice be there, Jim, to the parent who potentially is considering, sports psychology for their child if they're 8, 9, 10 years old? Is that too young or not?
Well, I think we could go a lot younger, and I could give you a personal example. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she was having a temper tantrum around a year and a half old, and my wife said, "Hey, teach her one of those breathing techniques that you teach your athletes." And it just never dawned on me that, I've worked with very young gymnasts before, but it never dawned on me in that moment to actually use some of those strategies and techniques with my own daughter. And so I said, sure, why not? And we both laid on the floor and I did some belly breathing, and she started kind of mimicking what I was doing. And then as she was breathing, she all of a sudden started laughing and feeling better. And so I think a lot of these skills and strategies that we teach in sports psychology should be started as young as possible. in terms of no pressure necessarily in terms of getting them perfectly right, but breathing techniques, visualization, body language, positive self-talk, those can be started and should be started at such a young age. And they're such foundational topics for life. And so, I kind of wish that these were taught earlier, for our generation. And that's one of the things that Phil and I are so excited about in terms of the Champions Mind app is helping to make sports psychology for everyone. And something that we should all be using to get the most out of our day instead of just kind of winging it and hoping things work out.
Yeah, let's face it, most people do, don't they? They're very comfortable with the way things go. And yeah, as you say, they just let things happen as opposed to taking control.
And that's absolutely true. I mean, that's what we like to talk about in terms of having a champion's mind is you need to be proactive with your life. What do I really, really want? And how bad do I want it? And then what do I need to do physically to be at my best, but then also mentally to be at my best? And one of the misconceptions I think we'd all agree in terms of sports psychology is that you're either born with confidence or you're not, or you're either good at composure or you're just someone that loses their temper a lot. And as we know, mental skills can all be learned and developed similar to physical skills. So that's what's exciting is that we have much more control over ourselves and our performance than we could ever probably even imagine.
Without a shadow of doubt. And one thing I'm just going to pick you up on a little bit earlier, you mentioned about the importance of relaxing, or you mentioned maybe not relaxing before a big game. Do you want to just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I appreciate you circling back to that. One of the things that, back in my day, late 80s, early 90s, when I was, playing most competitive sports or on teams and such, I think the general advice was, hey, just relax before the big game, or, just take a deep breath as if that's all you needed to hear. Whereas now when someone tells me they're nervous before they perform, or, they have a lot of butterflies in the belly, so to speak, before they perform, I think it's great. That's just energy. That's power. And so how can we tap into that? How can we channel that energy so that you can perform even better? It's been said before that pressure can improve a performance by 15% or, hinder a performance by 15%. And so that's what we do, I think, with that energy, with those butterflies. And as we talk about in sports psychology, it's all about trying to get those butterflies to fly in formation. And so welcoming the pressure, welcoming the stress, inviting challenges, rather than just trying to relax and get rid of all that. No one could perform their best with a resting heart rate.
So in effect, what you're saying is you're trying to shift the perspective around these butterflies and those sort of feelings that you get in your body, so that they're used, as you're saying, in a positive sense.
I think so. I think it's important to realize that the body is designed to perform better under stress. And so a lot of the physiological and psychological changes that occur before we perform are helpful. But most of us don't realize that because they're uncomfortable, or, we're just not used to having those feelings and those sensations. And so we start fighting ourselves and rather than helping ourselves in those moments.
I hope you found Jim's insights useful. The rest of the interview was conducted on episode 84, where he and his colleague Phil White share more wisdom and discuss their excellent book, The Leader's Mind. I'd definitely go back through the archives and tune into this. And some food for thought for you. Jim talked about some people's belief that confidence is something that you're born with. Obviously, as practitioners, I know that isn't true, and I have got a bias there. And, I wonder, what is your relationship with confidence? Do you see it as fixed? Or do you see it as plastic? Do you see it as situational? What messes with your confidence when you perform, when you train or coach? And importantly, where do you get confidence from? Is it a good night's sleep, your attitude to training, your past performance, a good warm-up, or maybe other people's kind words? Give it some thought. And until Tuesday's football-related episode, if you have a spare 30 seconds, feel free to rate and review. the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast favourably with Apple. 5 stars would be fantastic. It helps us grow our reach and have a positive influence on more lives. Take care. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.